I wanted to thank you again for making yourself available tonight, for your interest in the position of District 4 Winnebago County Board seat. So I'm joined tonight by Keith McDonald, the Republican Caucus Chair and County Board Member. We will be, since we're having a little bit of technical difficulty, we're not live streaming. We are going to upload all 3 interviews when they're ready to go, so that it's fair to all candidates, and also that the questions and answers are available to the public, media, and other board members as well. But thank you again for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate being considered for an appointment for District 4.
Yes, sir. So I'll kick things off. I got a couple questions, and I'll turn things over to Mr. McDonald. So if you can, one of the biggest things to me is why somebody's interested in a position. Tell us about why District 4 County Board seat, why now, what's driving your interest and enthusiasm in pursuing the open seat at this time, Brad?
Well, I had a few people reach out to me from the district that I knew and here in the community in Roscoe and Rockton, and wanted to know if I would consider doing it. And I just thought about it a little bit, and really interests me because I'm involved on a lot of boards. I like to give back, try to help things if I can. Discussed it with my family, even brought it up to my employer. They were all for it. If I wanted to do it, go for it, they said. They thought I'd do a good job. So the biggest thing is giving back to the community and helping others. Gotcha.
Tell us a little bit about your background, personally, professionally, and once you tell us about your background, and take much time as you need, then how does that prepare you for being a county board member?
First off, I don't like talk about myself, but I'll give it a shot. I was born and raised in Winnebago County. I graduated from Guilford High School. Went on to Rock Valley, got an associate's degree in marketing, played baseball there. Lived in Roscoe the last 22 years. I've been married for 32 years, 2 children. My son is 20 and my daughter is 17, which is why I'm turning gray real quickly. I've been in the manufacturing sector for 38 years. First 6 were out on the shop floor, tool and die and CNC machining. So the last 32 have been in sales and mostly sales management. Personal side of things, I coached my son in baseball for 10 years. I ran state line pony baseball up here in Roscoe, Rockton, South Beloit area, which we had about 500 kids in the program, which means right around 1,000 parents. When I took it over, we were basically wondering if we'd have the money to buy jerseys for the kids. And through the board, adding a few, keeping a few on, worked within a budget, became very successful. And when I left 4 years later off of the board, it was really good financial standing, and they were able to do a lot of different things. A lot of us through fundraising. Different board members had different opinions, listened to all of them. Came to a conclusion, looked up how different leagues were doing, a little researching, and became successful there. Went on to be on the board of the Rockford Skating Club. My daughter was a figure skater, so that was interesting. There was 10 different board members there. I was out of my safety element with ice skating, which I knew nothing about, but they wanted me to be on the board and kind of respected that I knew nothing about it. So currently serving on the Illinois USSSA Softball Hall of Fame board. And one that probably makes up my biggest time is the Greg Lindmark Foundation, which I am founder and president of. We currently have 10 people on the board. Started from scratch, 0, and public knowledge, we are a 501c3 organization. So we currently have right around $110,000 in our savings, which we use for counseling. And it is for all first responders, police, fire, 911 dispatchers, jailers, anyone. So pretty proud of that. With my involvement in that, I don't want anyone to think that I'm going to rubber stamp anything that comes across if I am appointed for Sheriff's Department or for related to that. It has to be feasible in the budget. Kind of been successful through the years, basically with teamwork, listening to others, researching the facts, respecting others' opinions, and asking a lot of questions and coming to conclusions. I did get certified through Caterpillar, some training when we went down to certified business strategy, green belt training, and a few other things like that. So been in a lot of leadership roles in the sales department on a lot of boards. So I think it's a good fit to join the county board.
Gotcha. Thank you. Just I guess a quick follow-up, and I'll turn things over to Mr. McDonald. Give me a little more for those that may be watching, might not have the hard copy of your resume, a little more on your private sector background.
In regards to like Greg Lindmark Foundation or private sector?
Work history, that type of thing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was at Top Die Casting in South Beloit for about 30 years. And I was in their tool shop before that for 5 or 6 years. Started in sales over at Top and worked my way in the last 16 years there. Were sales manager, which I had 3 direct and probably about 12 representatives working for me, customer reps. Then I went to a company called American Metal Technologies in Racine, worked there for about 1.5 years, and saw a position open up at Forest City Gear, and very well respected, and I've heard a lot about them in the industry and locally and what they do, their family values and whatnot. So I turned my resume into them and was hired on September of last year, where I'm currently a regional sales manager there.
Gotcha. Thank you very much, Mr. McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Forgive me if I look down. I prepared questions so I can make sure I ask all 3 of my applicants the same questions. The decisions we make as board members have to be approved by at least a majority of the vote most of the time. There are some circumstances where it's more than a simple majority. Tell me about ways you would try to persuade or influence your fellow board members to see things the same way as you do.
You kind of cut off on that last part. I'm sorry. Could you repeat that?
Sure. In a group setting, how would you persuade people to see things the same way that you do, to come around to your way of thinking or to help support your ideas?
First off, anytime I reach a decision or what in my mind is a decision, because through the influence of others, if they have better points, respect everybody's opinion. I would do the research on my end and bring out those bullet points and present them to the different people and try to convince them that way.
Okay. And kind of a follow-up to that is, if you had an idea for item A and you thought it was the best thing ever, it goes to the board floor and it gets voted down. Being in sales, I'm sure you've been voted down in the past. How do you deal with rejection? How do you get back to team building? How do you get back to working together again?
Well, if the majority votes against something, that's the way it is, and it didn't go my way, that's fine. I would chalk that up to experience, learn from it, and move on. No hard feelings.
Great. The next question I have is around the public safety sales tax. Obviously, as I'm sure you're aware, there's a sales tax that's meant just for public safety. My question is how that tax money should be spent. I'm just using fictitious numbers, but if the sheriff's budget was $20 million and the sales tax revenue was $2 million, did that go straight, and I shouldn't have said sheriff's department, but all of public safety, because we need it for the courts and other things too. Point being, is that additional funds that should be figured into their budget, or does that make their budget where it was and it allows us to spend money elsewhere through the county? And that's not public sales tax dollars, but it makes it easier to spend in other places of the county. Which way do you think that tax is best spent?
I think, first of all, if a tax is voted on by the public, I think you need to honor the way they want it spent. When it went into the election process, if you want to call it that. The way I understood your question, you had 2 million and their budget was 20. Was that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. The regular budget before the tax was 20, and now we have an additional 2.
Oh, we have an additional 2. Okay. I think that's up for discussion. I would need to do some research on other areas that may need it. Would it all go to the sheriff's department? No, I wouldn't think so. You know, your courts and the rest of it need it. That would be open for discussion with different board members and committees. It's kind of dancing around that question, but I don't think it should automatically go there. But I'd also have to have respect for what it was, who voted on what and where the money was voted to go, I guess would be the biggest thing. I believe we need to earn and keep the public's trust in the Winnebago County Board.
Thank you. And my last question, again, everything's been too dramatic and too serious and over the top. So my final question is, who's your favorite football team?
It's the Packers. For my whole life, I've been a Packer fan. I know that's probably not popular in some people, but hey, I got to stick up for my Packers.
Sure. No, everything's gotten very serious, and we still need to come to the surface once in a while, look at the sun, and take it on a notch. That's all the questions I had prepared. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, with an answer like that, it's been good talking to you, Brad. Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Quick question. You know, you've been in the community, you've been observing the county board. You know these are very unique times with the COVID-19 discussion. That kind of changes some things. The appointment for District 4 is very short. It's between now and essentially very early in December when we seat a new board. What, in a very condensed time frame with a lot going on, what would be 2 or 3 priorities that you would have as a newly appointed county board member coming in at very interesting times?
Well, in the short term, which, you know, the budget's coming up, which, you know, there's shortcomings there. That would probably be priority number 1, to work through that and figure out how that money can be best spent. And who knows what kind of tax revenue is going to come in with this COVID being going on the way it is. That would, longer term, try to work towards a balancing the budget, or work towards that, if not obtain that, while also improving the economic development. Public safety is also up there with me, but short term, it's got to be the budget. I mean, that's going to be a tough one, but I think everyone working together get through that.
And I want to jump in right quick. That's a question, if I may. You alluded to it. You know, the last several years, the board has been approving budgets that include deficit spending. We're projected to lose over $6 million this year because of the COVID-19 virus. We will be forced to spend down our reserves. Do you have any experience with budgets? And if so, what steps do you think the county should take immediately?
As far as steps for the county, without having any of the background knowledge and research and anything, it's hard for me to answer that. I'm sorry, I apologize for that, but I like to have a lot of facts in front of me, and I ask a lot of questions to obtain different people's opinions and facts. But obviously, with our foundation, we had a budget. Smaller term, state line pony baseball was, you know, pretty much broke when I took it over, and doing very well when I left. Obviously, try to spend less than you have coming in. I know that's not a possibility right now, and it's only going to get worse with this COVID. And when people get back to work and that, and get some of these businesses open back up. I know I probably didn't answer your question very well on which steps to take, but without knowing a lot of the facts, I don't even want to give an answer on that.
Nope, I get it. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Let's talk COVID-19 for a second. So obviously that's been consuming a lot of attention in the community and across the country. Sometimes county board members get asked questions by the public and the media around specific items on a board or committee agenda, a budget item, you know, a policy, that type of thing. But aside from that, they also get asked questions about community issues. And in this case, COVID-19 is what everybody's talking about. And knowing that could be a question you get in the future, what's your general thoughts on what we're facing with COVID-19? Anything you think is going well, poorly, concerns, questions, just your general reaction to what we're navigating through?
I think it's a real problem. We obviously have a lot of different drug manufacturers and whatnot trying to find an antidote. But I think through continuing the education of the public about social distancing, wearing the masks to help calm it down. And we need to start, my opinion, we need to slowly start opening up some businesses while monitoring them, make sure they're following the guidelines. Obviously some restaurants and whatnot, if you're to open, you take half the tables out, things like that. Capacity, spacing. There's also a lot of businesses, what we call the cubicle farms. You got people packed in there. You have to also watch that. I think we're doing a good job with the education part as far as the social distancing and wearing masks in public. But we have a long way to go. We need to get back and get the economy moving again, but safety is obviously the number one concern.
Okay, thank you. So we're in this interesting thing where a board member who had been elected a couple of times, I believe, stepped off the board midterm. So we're replacing that position for several months. And then what happens in December is there's 2 more years left on the term technically. If you were appointed now, would you want to continue for the additional 2 years that would round out the District 4 term?
Absolutely.
Or you would want to versus just serving for the several month interim piece?
I would want to continue on, absolutely. I don't think you can get a whole lot done in 6 months. Build some relationships, teamwork, work together and get some things done. It takes a lot longer than 6 months. I would continue as long as possible.
Gotcha. So one of the things I've heard board members, work through is the balancing act of they represent their district. In your case, it would be District 4, a very unique and specific part of the county. But a lot of also what the county board votes on, county board members, are on items that affect the entire county. And some things are specific to your district. Many things are general to the entire part of the county or another part of the county. How do you view your role as a county board member balancing those two dynamics?
I think you have to look at it as a whole. It's Winnebago County. All the districts make up Winnebago County. Yes, overseeing District 4 if I'm appointed, but you also have to have the same for all the counties. I mean, it is Winnebago County. All the districts should matter.
You said you've talked to some folks. When you talk to residents inside District 4, what type of feedback do you get? What issues do they bring up to you in your discussions with the community?
I would say obviously the big thing is COVID, but when the economy is going to open up, when are people going to go back to work? But the biggest thing probably here is that I've come across is taxes, whether that's state, county, whatever the case. It's high taxes, and some people would like to see some more businesses open up in this area. So economic development. Gotcha.
Well, there's because the person that departed the position was voted in as a Republican, clearly was a Republican. It's important that the position be filled by a Republican. And some people that's very, very important too, and they want to make sure that the person we stick in there is a true blue, true red, I guess, Republican. Help us understand how you see yourself, and do you see yourself as a Republican? If so, help people understand why you think that.
Yeah, I've always been a Republican. I am very much Republican, although I think one of the problems in, well, the whole country actually is not respecting each other's opinions, Democrats and Republicans, but I think you have to listen to both sides, but I'm very strict Republican. Okay.
And I believe your voting record reflects that in primaries.
That's correct.
Okay, gotcha. Mr. McDonald talked about the 1% public safety sales tax fund. There's another fund that gets a lot of discussion and attention in the community and by county board members. That is our host fee fund, Brad.
Mhm.
We, for years, the Winnebago County landfill, which is a private sector entity, imports garbage. They handle local garbage to their landfill, but they also import garbage from other communities. And when that happens, there is a small fee called a tipping fee that host communities receive through their local government, in our case, county government. We get some tipping fee dollars from the importation of garbage from other communities. And traditionally, we've used those dollars for special projects, development projects, usually externally focused, not exclusively, but usually. But it's been very specific around development or special projects. Obviously, these are interesting times, COVID and otherwise. And every year that I've seen there be a budget discussion with the county, there's always discussion in some circles about what to do going forward with the host fee fund and where dollars are directed. Do you have any particular thoughts on the host fee, maybe how it was used in the past, good or bad, questions you have, or how you see that fund being used going forward in the future?
I think the majority should be, if not all of it, used on economic development. That's not to say in cases like this, these are different times right now. Could some of it be redirected? Yeah, I believe so. But I think most of it should be, the majority, if not all, like I said, on economic development. And I don't know if I have my facts correct yet, but I think right now it's on issued out through grants instead of loans. Is that correct?
Right now, historically, it has been primarily through grants, meaning that the county board would vote on a proposal to give money to an organization or partnership, and that is not paid back. A loan would be paid back, and yes.
Yeah, I was thinking more on the lines of the money being issued on on a loan. It's what I would prefer, zero interest, to be paid back over, I don't know, 20 years, whatever the amount may be. Again, I hate to keep skirting issues and sounding like this, but I don't have all my facts. Something, again, I would need to research, just giving my brief opinion on that without having all the facts.
Understood. Brad, what questions, this is a new process for anybody coming from outside the board. What questions do you have for us, for Mr. McDonald and myself, or the board in general?
Yeah, after 3 interviews this evening, what's the process after that?
Well, the immediate next step, I'm sure your phone will ring and you may have some folks reach out to you and ask you some additional questions offline.
Sure.
That would be one that comes to mind too. I believe Mr. McDonald is going to have next Monday a Republican caucus meeting. I see him shaking his head yes, and there'll be more discussion at the Republican caucus next Monday. I think I speak for our board. I think I speak for Mr. McDonald. We would all like to have this process conclude in the nearest, as soon as possible, and get to the right conclusion and move things quickly. So that the next couple steps is, I'm sure there'll be offline individual conversations, but then next Monday they will have a caucus meeting, and I'm sure there'll be discussions about their thoughts on the various candidates. We do have a board meeting on, I believe it's the 14th. That would be the soonest, unless we'd have a special board meeting, and I don't see that at this moment, that we could potentially have a recommendation voted on by the board. It would take a majority of the county board to approve an appointment.
Mm-hmm. One other one, kind of unrelated to this process, but I thought of it when you asked me the question regarding COVID. How do you feel Winnebago County's doing with it?
Myself, I think we played catch up, as did the state and the country, in particular on understanding. I think we're still learning what the virus is and how it affects people. I think we're chasing the testing. I think we've done a good job of catching up in the last couple of weeks. And since we don't have a vaccine or a tried and true treatment, the testing piece is really important, because we all want to get back to some degree of normal. I think there's going to be, what I anticipate, and it's not ideal, is a phasing of some sort where we progressively work towards a more fully open society and business sector. I could be wrong. There's things I thought were going in one direction, and then there was a complete change of direction a week later. But I don't necessarily believe there'll be a hard open on May 1 or at any time in early May. But I could see a series of steps around how do we safely reopen this sector and that sector, adhering to social distancing, as you referenced. And I would also say what I've learned is opinions abound on that very hotly, and I think rightfully so. There's a lot of, everyone's impacted in some way, some extremely harshly financially, some extremely harshly health-wise. So it's, you got two once in 100-year issues colliding, along with the fact that you have restrictions put in by government that people are not used to. And it's a lot.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. What other questions, any other questions you have for Mr. McDonald about the county, about anything coming up, that type of thing?
Yeah, Mr. McDonald, you gave a figure. I believe the shortcoming for the budget is around $6 million this year. Was that correct?
Because Frank may have more accurate numbers than I do. I thought it was 6.3 or 6.8, but it's going to be a significant impact to our budget.
He's like field goal posts. It's actually right now. It's like 6.58, but there's a huge loss of revenue, tax and fee. But those projections are initial. That's what was shared with the county board by our administration, finance department, and that. And so that's an initial estimate that could obviously vacillate depending on how fast things bounce back. But our budget goes through September 30th, sir. So
the next question.
Yeah, I'll let Mr. McDonald talk any budget thoughts he has or commentary. But bottom line is whoever gets appointed is going to be involved in a really interesting budget cycle. The budget that we have that is ending over the next several months, ending September 30th of 2020, and then the one you plan for over the summer and the early fall that begins on October 1 in the last couple months of this appointment term for the next year. So, very interesting time. Come in and it'll be a lot of budget discussion. Anything you want to add, Mr. McDonald, on that?
No, I think you're exactly right. We've got a significant shortfall for this year for the 2020 budget. 21 budget, I don't even know how we begin planning that because we don't know how long these effects are going to have. We don't know when things will get back to normal or what normal will mean when things go back.
Yeah, that's true. It sure is hard to plan without knowing what the future holds.
Absolutely.
What other questions do you have, Brad?
I think that about does it for me.
So really quick, so if you get appointed on the board, help Mr. McDonald, help other board members, department heads, elected officials at the county understand what working with you would look like, engaging, since we have an extra minute or two.
Yeah, I've always been a strong believer in teamwork and listening to others' opinions with respect. Researching, I would obviously read the packets if they were given to me and I'm on the board, do some research. I mean, if you're looking for somebody to just say yes, I'm probably not the right guy. I like to ask questions. Like I said, research, and I really think I do well in team environments, and teamwork is probably my biggest positive point.
Gotcha. Thank you. Mr. McDonald, do you have any questions for Brad? You're good at this time?
So, thank you so much. You did a great job, Mr. Lindmark. Thank you for your time tonight.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks again for considering me for an appointment. Appreciate it.
So we're at the half-hour mark, which is how our first interview concluded, right about that time as well. Brad, thank you for your time. I'm sure you'll get some phone calls and by others, and really appreciate you being willing to talk to us tonight and to serve.
No problem. It's my honor. Thank you.
All right. Be safe.
You too. Bye now.